So this video is about how to cut a filter into the right shape. The end goal is so that we can get the filter into a housing that will attach to what we want to attach it to. So first thing I'm going to do is outline where I'm going to cut. As best I can. And I'm going to leave a little bit of room so that there's some space between this edge for the ring of sealant that I put around, which will probably be epoxy. And now what I need to do is cut the filter. So several ways that you can do it is, one, you can use a razor blade. This one's going to be tricky because of how deep this filter goes. And I don't want to have several layers of cuts, because that will make getting a good seal a little bit tougher. I think one thing I might actually try is to cut it. So I'm going to pause this while I look for a pair of scissors. Now that I have the scissors, I'm going to try making my first cut in an area that I don't really need, just so that I can see how it goes, and it actually seemed to go fairly well. So I'm going to try actually making my cuts. This is going to take some time, but I'm just going to go and actually cut each fin or each fold of this paper one at a time. So far this seems to be going better than I expected. Helps that the tips of these scissors are kind of sharp, so they're able to, once they cut to the other side, they're able to go straight through. Now this I didn't intend to do. I kind of applied some stress to the filter. And the reason why I want to avoid that is because if, like this paper, you know, I can bend it and stuff and that's fine, but if I bend it too much and I tear, then you can get something, I could end up with a spot where air can go through without being filtered. And that's exactly the opposite of what I want. Because the goal of this is for the only way for air to get through is for it to be filtered. These beads are the areas where the filters are glued are definitely the toughest spots to work with. If I had a longer razor blade, I would just cut through, but I'm worried about making multiple layers, like essentially having a cut there and then a cut there, and not getting them completely sealed. So I'll just keep cutting on the outside. So far, so good. I am applying a little more stress than I want to the filter medium. You can see how that's buckling a little bit. I don't want that. I do not know how resilient this filter medium is to buckling. Buckling is a word for bending, as you see this filter doing. Uh-oh. And I do want to make sure these cuts go all the way through. Okay, now I should be able to just do one last, oh, there, got a lot of that buckling that I don't want. I'm going to try maybe cutting this last bit. With the razor blade. Looks like I might be tearing the material a little bit, which is, again, something I don't want to do. Yep, I definitely tore at it there. So I have to really try to make sure that when I glue it, I take care of those areas. I have a little bit of the filter on the other side. Something is catching there. Oops. It looks like maybe where I thought I had gone all the way through, I hadn't. So when I go back to seal this up, what I'm going to do is try to make sure I use a very heavy layer of sealant, especially in areas like that where some of it tore, because I don't want any air to be able to get through. And I should probably have some ventilation here. I maybe should be using a respirator right now. Sometimes glass is used as the material for creating a filter, because glass can actually generate a lot of static electricity, which will help particles stick to it. But you definitely don't want to breathe in fine strands of glass if that's what this is. That's essentially the problem with asbestos. Just the shininess makes it look like it might be glass. On the plus side, if it is glass, I found a fairly good filter too. That's very likely to really be a HEPA filter. But I'm still going to need to trim this down a little bit, because right now as is, even without a layer of glue around the outside, it's not quite fitting into the housing. I'm going to focus on trimming this side, since this side's a little bit harder to work with since that glue's already there. Unless I suppose I can actually just trim that area off, though there's a negative to that, since this layer of material is actually keeping these folds separated, so I think I'll work on trimming this side. Scissors aren't working very well there. Wonder if I'll have better luck with the razor blade. I have cutting surface down, and I will see if maybe I can get better luck. Huh. Scissors were cutting it before. I don't know why I'm not having luck now. Perhaps a different pair of scissors will work better. All right. It's a bit tedious, but I seem to have a better result if I cut one fold at a time. And while saying that, I'm still cutting about 3 folds at a time for expediency. So let's see how this is going. I think that might just about fit. Pull up a layer. That black layer, it's a carbon filter, which it's not necessary for filtering viruses, but it is nice for reducing the level of any chemicals that you would otherwise breathe in. So as long as it's there, I might as well leave it. And it looks like I'm almost there. One thing I'm a little bit worried about is once I put a layer around this, that it won't fit. So I want to actually try to get rid of a little bit more of this outside. I would like to know what exactly what material the manufacturers used to separate these fins, just because it seems like a pretty nice material. It has a good amount of pliability. It's still a little bit sticky, but it has some mechanical strength. If I could apply this material, I think I would actually use it for the seals around the edge. In fact, initially, the company that put this together may have used the same material to seal the edges of their filter. Though generally filters like this, they're not, the layer on the edge isn't quite as good as for protective equipment. So if you can do a good job of putting another material around these edges, you can actually create a filter that's more reliable than what you started out with. Let's see, this is still sticking a little bit. Trying to figure out where it's tightest. Looks like maybe that edge and over there. I'm kind of concerned about cutting this material away, but it looks like there's a little bit here. Just thinking that there's a little bit there that I could get at without removing that glue, but if I go any further, that won't be the case. See, I think I'll remove one more fold. I'm trying to remove some of this, but I don't want to actually get down. I don't want to actually tear the filter itself. Uh-oh. Which I just did. That's what I didn't want to do. So I have to actually go one fold farther than I had intended. Well, I'm not careful. I'll end up undoing this whole filter. I don't want any extra folds that will get between the filter and the glue. Now there's definitely some extra room in there, maybe a little bit more than I intended, but there's still some around, still not that much space around the side, so I'm going to try to trim this in a little bit more. Okay, now there's a fair amount of space. So now all I need to do is put a layer of material around the outside there. And I should be able to then slide this in here and then just put a layer, one more layer of sealant around the outer edge. And I should have a reliable seal. And that's a project for another video. This video will be about sealing the edge on the outside of the filter. And I'm going to be using epoxy. And to keep my hands free, I'm going to use a computer or digital assistant to do the timing. I have about 6 minutes to work on this epoxy, so I'm going to have the timer go off in 4 minutes, which will give me about 2 minutes to continue working. Echo, set timer for 4 minutes.
4 minutes, starting now.
And I'm just realizing I don't think I have enough epoxy. I don't have enough epoxy for this. And I think I was just panicking there. I think I might actually have enough epoxy. Unfortunately, I did waste some of it in that panic. But I have about 4 times the amount here. I think that will be enough. Echo, set timer for 4 minutes.
4 minutes, starting now.
I should have a window open. All right. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to use, oops, don't want the tape to stick directly to the filter. I'm going to put some glue. On the edge of the filter. I'm going to use the tape to kind of hold it in place. It is actually going to take a fair amount of this epoxy. So I might have been correct in the assessment of my initial panic when I'm like, oh, I don't have nearly enough glue, because it's looking like I really don't have nearly enough epoxy. Because right now that's just enough for a couple. That's just going to get the very first part started. Even there, I think I need a little bit. A little bit more than I have. Maybe I can make that work. Don't want to have any gaps.